don't be afraid to be loud and take risks. It's the era of safe and, nice messaging and stuff. It's kind of over. Like, don't be afraid to show your personality, be a bit tongue in cheek and just kind of go for it.
Welcome back to another episode of Instant's Quick to Buy podcast. Today we have not one, but two very special guests. Joining me today in the virtual studio are Shivali, Bennion, and Cassi, Idun, the brilliant co-founders of Shaded the Studio, a DTC marketing agency that is revolutionizing how brands are approaching their marketing strategies. Now, Shivali Bennion is a results-driven and strategic D2C expert with over 8 years experience in digital and D2C marketing. She's managed budgets from low 4 figures to over $20 million in a year, focusing on improving key metrics around CPA, AOV, LTV, you name it. She's worked with incredible brands, including the Inkey List, Absolute Collagen, Sophia Webster, and has grown D2C Live into an international community of over 3,500 brands. Now, her partner at Shaded the Studio is Cassi Idun, often referred to as the strategic creative with over 10 years in the creative and D2C industry. She's a brand and creative marketer with a demonstrated ability of building viral brands and scaling revenue within the beauty and wellness industries. Her expertise lies in unlocking revenue opportunities with creatives across all facets of D2C, including paid media, email, websites, and of course, organic social. With this combined expertise, Shiv and Cassi created Shaded the Studio to help brands navigate all the complexities of D2C to show that content creation should be a profit center and not a cost line. So that's why I am super excited, and I thought these two would make the perfect guests to discuss what it takes to build that high-converting D2C content strategy. Shiv and Cassi, thank you so much for being my guests today here on Click to Buy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Becca. That was a very glowing intro. Appreciate it. But yeah, we're very happy to be here today. Thank you so much, Becca. Lovely to be here.
Yes, well, I have so many questions. As our listeners know, I like to learn it all. But before we dive in, just hearing your backgrounds, I am super curious, how did this all come together? What inspired you to start Shaded the Studio, and what's your mission?
So, Cassi, should I tell the real story of how Shaded started?
Ooh.
Yeah, let's go for that one. Yeah, so Cassi and I worked together over 3 years where we grew Naughty Haircare from 200, 300K to over 1.5 million in revenue through me heading up DTC and Cassi heading up content. So we were a powerhouse duo, as we've been told. And that wasn't coming from me, a quote on our website. But yeah, so Cassi and I have kept friends. Cassi had her own business for over 2 years after she left. Naughty and I went to agency world where I became MD of an agency. So I was ranting to her one day, being like, "Oh, I just one day want to start my own business, and I'm so proud of you." And so, I think it's amazing how you've gone off and done this all by yourself. Over 10 margaritas, between the two of us, not each, and we were having our best life. And then Cassi went, "Well, why don't we do an agency together? Both of our skill sets are opposite and completely complement each other." And I obsessed over it for 2 weeks straight. And thought of P&L ideas and what our client offerings going to be like and our ICP. And then I met up with Cassi, texted her being like, "Hey, I've been thinking about this nonstop. Let's meet. I've got all these ideas." And Cassi, what was your reaction? I was like, "Oh, great. What do you have ideas about?" Tell me more. I genuinely, we had so many margaritas, I didn't even remember suggesting this. So I was like, Grumpy is obviously the best version of me, comes out with some great ideas. Oh, we got here in the end, and that's all that matters.
Absolutely. Wow, I love that. Who knew that a winning business idea would start with 10 margaritas? This is a great beginning, and I hope that you will always tell the true story because that was great. And I love that after you had this idea, you just obsessed over it and kept thinking, and here we are today. That's incredible.
I think it wouldn't be, Cassie's obviously been doing this for a while now, so she's like been very patient with me.
Yeah.
As a new founder, like going through the ups and downs, she's like cool as a cucumber, exactly what you need as a business partner. So I'm really happy and really grateful that we're on things like your podcast to share our stories. So thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. Well, I can't wait to dive into it, especially now hearing how both of you kind of complement each other so well in like the strategy and the execution and having these kind of gone apart for different experiences and now back together at it. So maybe I can dive into some of my content questions. So, Shiv, you mentioned to me previously when we were chatting before the podcast that about you've seen kind of 52% of ad effectiveness on Meta is driven by the creative side and that it's becoming even more important on platforms today like TikTok. Could you explain a little bit more about the statistic and the implications that this would have for other D2C brands out there?
Yeah, of course. So I've managed, I mean, like you mentioned in your intro, budgets of $2 million a month. And that includes like PPC, paid media, etc. One of the things that always gets overlooked is the content strategy. So you put these massive budgets between like, the algorithms and just let them run. So you might have like the highest technical setup possible, but Meta just released a study and that's 52% comes from them. You can only ever get up to 48% of ad effectiveness with the technical setup alone. So me and Cassie both think that actually like content is a really undervalued part of the revenue generating funnel. And a lot of the work we do is like not only create the assets, so create the creative production, create the assets from like photo shoot, ideation through to photo shoot, through to like end product, but also like coach the teams in terms of taking that more creative performance approach to be able to really get the most out of ads. And that just doesn't stop at ads. It's also over email and website and all of the facets of D2C. Coming from brand side, both Cassie and I kind of managed all of that process. So that's what we're doing now at Shaded.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing. And honestly, something you said really stuck out to me. You said like a lot of brands you feel like are undervaluing like their content strategy. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think brands might be under investing in something that could be potentially a revenue generator for them or at least help them with their overall strategy?
Because it's less tangible. Like creativism is easy to show the changes. And Cassie's the best one to talk about how difficult it is to get creative budget out of brands. But when I'm managing the whole P&L at in EBITDA level, creative is always the thing that gets questioned the most. It's not the ad spend. It's not the amount that you're spending with Klaviyo or other email marketing platforms. It's also always like, do we really need this shoot? And the fact is, you do. Like, content's never been more effective, more needed, and especially with the emergence of channels like TikTok and its importance. You need to post things like 2 to 3 times a day, and brands just don't have the capability to do that a lot of the time with the budgets that they currently have set aside. So we try and work with brands on the budget. If their budget is their budget, then that's fine. But we try and like optimize all of the different channels so that we can like make a bit more room for the content and then show that like it's not just this drain of resources. It's actually something that's really important. So Cassie, you might want to add to that because you're the one that's always faced these problems around budgets.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Cassie. I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've worked, as we mentioned, like brand side as well as agency side. So I've had to literally basically pull blood from a stone with brand managers and brand founders and like, please can we get some budget together so we can actually demonstrate what these amazing products and services are doing. So it's a common thing. And definitely now sitting agency side, it's something that we can come in with a bit more of an element of expertise and say, that if you can actually set aside X budget to do a shoot, whether it's a big budget or a smaller budget, and we're filming kind of on the street or WhatsApp or whatever it is, it's absolutely worth doing. And these are the creatives that we can actually get out of it. So still trying to squeeze budget out of brand sounds.
Yeah.
And like we're making progress.
Absolutely. Actually, kind of like continuing on this topic. So for the brands that you've squeezed and they finally understand that, yes, a creative strategy could be a profitable choice for my business. What are some of the key elements that you see in a creative strategy, Cassie? Because I know you've worked with a lot of brands like within the beauty and wellness industry, but I'm sure now with Shade of the Studio, perhaps other industries as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had quite a wealth of experience. So from bigger brands like Coca where we understood that budget was essential for creative from the day dot, and we could kind of go wild and do some really great things. Working with some other brands where that just wasn't an option at all. So just trying to figure out exactly what it is can we actually do with budget and how to demonstrate the things that we can get out of it. So I'd say some of the key elements for me have always been like actually spending some time focusing on the strategy up front. I think a lot of people tend to just go straight into like, let's have a shoot, let's just bang it out, get the assets together. We can do two emails, social media posts. There's our launch done. Whereas actually, I think the best way to really maximize and stretch a budget is to really think about the process up front. What are we trying to say? Which audiences are we trying to speak to? And how to make sure that we're getting more assets that go across each of these different things? And how can we then repurpose them across all of our channels and really make those assets work hard, keep working, keep repeating? So I'd say that's probably the key thing. And another thing that we tried to do is think about who are the different audiences that we're trying to speak to, and how do we tailor the messaging for creatives to speak to these different audience segments. So we might do one big shoot where we've got a man, we've got a young woman, we've got a woman of a certain age, trying to get as much representation as we can into the campaign. And then when we go into things like editing and creating video ads, where we're trying to talk to these different audience members, we've got somebody who can be the face of, the male customer, the middle-aged female customer, the mother to be, etc. Then you can start laying it influences. It goes on forever, but I think that's the core thing, is just to really focus on the strategy. What are we trying to say, and how are we going to speak to different audience segments as we go?
Absolutely. I think what you said there, especially about then you already have made sure you have that voice for your different kind of customer segments. I think that's really like a key kind of gem that people can take from what you just said, because I know myself from being in the content world, it's easy to focus on how are you going to distribute content or what tactics can you do. But what you said there about make sure you're starting with that messaging strategy up front, then you really are going to make the most out of the strategy and all that content you are finally investing in, hopefully, as a brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of our clients tend to realize they're just talking to the same people over and over again. They think their audience is one person. They've got a couple of different names for their audience personas, but they're missing out on such great opportunities to be speaking to different people across the board. We're working with a haircare brand at the moment and helping them. It's a very female-focused brand. We're helping them navigate and start talking to a male audience who also struggle with hair loss and certain scalp issues and things. So I think that's just something we see a lot. People just keep pushing the same message over and over to the same people. And it's about how can we rework that? How can we come in it with a different angle and introduce brands to different audiences?
Oh, that's very interesting. I actually have had a couple other agencies on the podcast. And I think now you're the third agency that's mentioned that you're working with brands and they've just totally missed like a very potentially profitable customer segment. So super interesting that you've seen that through the creative side. You can also find ways of targeting and kind of unlocking maybe more revenue potential. I think that's super exciting to think about how content could help a business like that.
And Becca, to that note, like the way that the algorithms are now running is that content's driving a lot of it. So a lot of the things like when you're on the technical setup, Advanced Shopping Plus or Performance Max, so all of these agencies who are running performance agencies, they're seeing that their like control that they're able to give is lessening. So things like TV still have Experian audiences and data sets, and they've got your credit card information and all these things that you really probably shouldn't be giving them, but they do. So they still are able to pull on that. But now more so, creative is the only way to reach those audiences. And Cassi and I have really started Shaded because it's shaded in name, shaded by nature. It sounds quite cheesy, but that sort of thing is because we want to shade in that grey area of who your customer is, where they're purchasing, whether they're purchasing in omnichannel, so retail, on TikTok, on Instagram, on email, and then pushing that content to the right places. Because a lot of the time, even if you do have, like a lot of those agencies will talk about like the missing customer segments, but they won't match that up for creative. So we found that to be really powerful.
Absolutely, Shiv. And kind of bouncing off what you just said. So you're kind of filling in the shaded area and figuring out which channels they can utilize to reach their customers. I know you've managed like massive budgets, but also smaller budgets for brands. You've kind of seen the spectrum of what brands can do with the budget they have. How do you approach with your clients kind of allocating that budget to get maximum ROI for their unique situations? Okay.
Oh, like we've had 8 clients in our first quarter. So like we've seen busy bees. We're really proud of the work that we've done, but they've been so different. Like we've worked with the Pizza Union who do like pizzas all over London, through to Strand and through to like a female wellness brand that we're working with now who like specialize in female intimacy products. All of those brands are unique. And even if you're comparing one female intimacy brand to another female intimacy brand, the way that they react on each of the channels is also nuanced. So the reason that we've started this process where to work with us, you need to go through a 30-day audit where we literally tear down every single part of the DTC channels, look at it from a technical and creative perspective to be able to then really fully advise, because often we see quite a lot of, and Cassie and I are brand side people most of our career, right? We've been on thousands of agency calls where they're like, I can guarantee you this CPA or this AOB or this, all of these guarantees. And unfortunately, although we would love to be able to do that, we can guarantee an ROI from our services because most of the brands that use us have that. But we don't necessarily know how much that is or what channel is going to be the best one for them and their message. Because some people like skyrocket. I know a brand doing 5 million a month on TikTok Shop. I also know brands that aren't operating TikTok Shop at all. So I think it's so nuanced. And the only way to really know it is to have that insight inside all of the channels and to all of the content to be able to deliver a really bespoke strategy, in my opinion, anyway.
Absolutely. And it sounds like I should also maybe get Cassie's opinion on this because, as you said, you've both kind of been brand side. I know she's also really into the creative. So what you said about Shiv about kind of having this bespoke strategy depending on their situation. Cassie, had you seen any brands that you've worked with that it's been kind of easy for you to figure out which of the potential D2C channels would work the best for them? Like, how do you spot these opportunities when you're working with a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as part of our client work that we do, we have this process where we conduct a full audit. And that is essentially a process where we kind of analyze past performance across past channels and we have a think about what could potentially work moving forward. Are they in the right channels? Are they speaking to the right people, etc.? And that really helps us kind of understand, immerse ourselves in the brand and then figure out, okay, you're really going for it on TikTok, but actually that's a bit of a drain of resource and probably not the best thing to be doing in terms of like a paid ad spend anyway. So we'll then help them redirect their budgets into what we think are essentially the right channels to be focusing on. And I think, to be fair, any brand can work across any channel, but sometimes, particularly when you're in budget restrained, there is just no point in spreading yourself really thin and trying to conquer every single channel. So we always have obviously the core things like Instagram, having content running on TikTok, focusing on email. Some brands we find will be amazing to have a paid social presence and it's worth investing spend in that area. Some brands we say, let's go all out with the organic content strategy and let's get a couple of shoots in, let's book a house, build loads of great content and start really driving engagement and reach that way before we start pushing budget into paid channels. So it kind of, depends really what their budgets are. We always think of an organic first strategy and then we can move on to more of a paid spend as we go down the line, but it really just kind of depends.
Interesting. I definitely think what you said there is about kind of getting engagement rolling with testing what works with organic makes a lot of sense, especially if the company is more constrained with their budget. You can see maybe what kind of resonates before you kind of put on the gas and put some fuel on the fire, if you will, with that paid social.
Exactly. It's kind of all about building your community across certain channels. So see where the people are engaging the most with the content that's being created, where your audience are most active. Maybe they are TikTok users, maybe they are Instagram users if we're talking social media. And then you can start to really feed that machine and focus on your paid strategy. Particularly with TikTok, I think it's very much test and learn that space. So kind of putting huge budgets behind paid advertising on TikTok isn't usually our best kind of strategy or the thing that we recommend to do first. We say build up your organic community on that channel, get into the habit of posting every day so that when you are, hitting it with paid ads, people are landing on your page, they're actually there to see something and learn something and be a part of the community. There's kind of nothing worse than having some ads running. People come and check you out and you've got absolutely nothing else to offer beyond that paid ad that they've just seen. So yeah, always about the organic community first.
Absolutely. And of course, this podcast is put together by the company I work for, Instant, which is a landing page builder. And I really love what you said there because, of course, on our side of the equation, we have a tool that brands can use to make landing pages. But essentially, one of the best ways for driving traffic is by actually having a really strong paid ad strategy and making sure that you match the creative between what's on your e-commerce sites, if that's where they're going to land, and then the whole messaging down the entire campaign. So I think this will be definitely a lot of value for brands out there that are listening and thinking, how do I need to kind of shape up my creative strategy? Do I have something that's working right now? Or maybe you hopefully got some ideas from this episode from all of the nice gems that both of you have dropped. Especially given that both of you have so much experience working with so many different brands. I know everything is really unique depending on the situation, but I was curious if there was any kind of common mistakes or pitfalls that you've seen when working with brands who are building and shaping their content strategies.
I'll go first on this one. I think interestingly, a lot of the brands that work with us have actually helped wanting to get some help on their auditing of their actual agencies and their team setup. So some of them feel like they've got a really great organic strategy, but their paid is struggling, or their agency isn't performing the same way, and don't know whether it's external factors like the cost of living crisis, etc., and changing algorithms, or whether it's like dropping balls or not having the right agency support in place. So a lot of our consultation actually is around more what those brands need in terms of their resourcing to be able to commit to the types of things that the content strategy needs to deliver. So, like Cassi mentioned, there's lots of talk of TikTok, but actually, are you doing the channels that you're already operating on and getting traction on to the highest level before you start building more resource there? Now you're spreading yourself too thin because of that. So if we don't have additional resource, you don't have agencies, you don't have a big team, like you've only got a finite amount of time within that to be able to dedicate into the areas that drive the most revenue or profitability or whatever your goals are. So for us, I think, well, for me in particular, one of the things that I see brands struggle with is having the right resource in terms of, is it agency, is it in-house teams, etc. Help we support building those structures out for them. And then also kind of really, again, like Cassie's mentioned, like the strategy side, like or do they even really know the direction this is? Or are they kind of just always fixing fires? Like I know when I was brand side, I did a lot of fire. I was a firewoman many a time. And really that's great, but it doesn't drive the longer term growth. And then finally looking at everything from a CPA, AOV, LTV perspective is also really helpful. Even the content strategy, which is really the new approach and the reason why our agency, I think, has slight differences. Because like you mentioned, landing page is a great opportunity for content and really the perfect way to kind of take that ad spend or that organic strategy and flow it into the consumer journey. So it's all of those factors really come into it. Cassie?
Yeah, I think I definitely echo what you said, Shiv, and I think it's more of like a strategic content. It's not what we keep. I feel like I always take the fun out of content because I'm always thinking strategy, but I just think it's so important. Before we had fun, before we start dropping coin on content generation, we really just take a step back and have a think about what is it we're trying to say. And I think one of the most common things I've noticed going into brands and being exposed to all these different clients is that they're just so product focused. And they know their products inside out. They know the key claims, they know the ingredients, and they feel like that's all the customer wants to hear. And actually, I don't think most customers could care less, that that's not what's going to hook them in. I think obviously once you're on the website and obviously using landing pages and you want to know exactly what's in a product, etc. But I think actually putting in a customer is about more than talking product and all the things that maybe as a brand team you think people are interested in. It's actually more the founder story. Who are the team that are actually creating the products? What does the product development manager have to say about why she's made this product the way she has? What's the social media manager up to today? It's kind of bringing in all the different stories behind the brand itself, and just trying to communicate a bit more of those things without always talking so heavily about product and efficacy, because, that should come.
Absolutely. I think in today's day and age, you're absolutely right. Like people want to feel like they kind of know a brand. And by putting some of these faces or creative angles, just you connect way more with something. And I think if you're buying statistically from a D2C brand rather than like on Amazon or something like that, like you care a little bit more about those little details when you're making that decision. Um, Obviously depends on the industry and whatnot, but I think I've seen, for example, on Baymard, they've done some research on like D2C brands, and a lot of what you've said has been included in some of their best practices because, yeah, people do care about the story and all these elements. So I also want to circle back to what you said about taking the fun out of content. I agree that sometimes it feels like strategy is like, oh no, like you're stopping people from this super creative idea. But I also think that by putting these kind of guide rails and a bit more like focus, that's where the opportunity to find something really creative lies once you have that. And obviously, you've both proven this through your success at Shaded Studio. So maybe you could share if you have any kind of story from a brand you've worked with of how maybe coming up with this strategy together has really helped them to improve their content strategy and see some kind of tangible results.
Yeah, so I think the one that hits to mind is actually we've finalized a 3-month project just before just kind of during the shaded process with a brand called Nadea. Fiona is amazing, founder. She's one of my favorite people. And we actually helped scale their ad spend over 200%. We increased their email marketing rates by 10%. We helped, they tenfolded their revenue since working with us over a year ago. And really that's because we've given them a strategic baseline in terms of how they operate. So we've helped them with like the guidance in terms of a competitor analysis, a gap analysis, a full creative review of their assets, but also where they use them. So we've like guided them in terms of what welcome flows on or an email, or what ads should be on your top of funnel versus ASC campaigns versus like bottom of funnel or retention. So that guidance has been really successful for this brand that was, in the 100s of thousands, and now hopefully, touch wood, going to be multi-million. Next year, she's forecasting over 2 million in revenue. So we're really, really proud of helping her and the team on that journey. But that's just a great example of a brand that just needed that extra strategic push because they already had beautiful creatives, but they weren't maybe getting as most out of them. Cassie, do you have any other thoughts on like what we're doing with our clients?
I was actually going to throw it back to our first job together when we worked at DTC, and we kind of just came in and rocked the whole place. It was like, okay, like, love what you've been doing, but for the next campaign, they were launching a towel gel, which actually then after our first campaign that we worked on together went on to be the best performing campaign they've ever had, and the best selling product that they've had, I think, still to date, conversation we've had with team members. And that was just from a content strategy piece. It was like, okay, we're not hitting the basics across all the different channels that we're working across. So let's have a real detailed strategy that's going across email, organic, paid, and then let's go and think about the shoot that we're going to do. And we had models coming in with like really short, tight afro hair. We had a guy with like this amazing head of curls. And I remember the brand was a bit of a sticky point because it was just something they hadn't done before. It felt very like, that's what I said earlier about, that's not the customer that we usually speak to. And we kind of just said, well, let's rip up the rule book and speak to new customers and get new faces in, have new faces of the brand. And yeah, it worked really well. We were able to kind of fill out a full strategy for 3 months, repurpose those assets once the campaign had kind of died down, go back and rework them again, keep the life cycle of that content going. And yeah, just saw some really great results. So it was our first experience working together, so should have should have known the sky was the limit then. But
well, I mean, it's still the best sellers, and I think a lot of that's probably actually the best example. Moving forward, I'll be using that one, Cassie.
that's my answer.
Yeah,
There we go.
see that.
I love that. Well, thank you both for sharing. Those are great examples. I always do a little blog recap of some of the greatest hits of the episode. So I'll definitely see if I can find some of those creatives to link in for people who are listening in and want to see kind of what that could look like.
Yeah, we'll send them over.
Perfect. I love that. Well, be sure to check in the episode description if you're listening in so you can check that out. But before we wrap up, although I'm sure I could talk to you both for like another 2 hours, but I want to respect your time. I would love it if, of course, this is the Click to Buy podcast. So it's time for our click-worthy tip. I would love it if each of you could just give me a short piece of advice that you would give to new and emerging DTC brands that want to improve their marketing strategy.
I would say the first tip is what we do in our audits. We do a red, amber, green of like all the different things in the D2C strategy. And we just get like our brand, we would in our audit do that for you, but I think brands should do it for themselves. Like find out what's red, find out what's amber, but also don't forget the green. So one of the things that, especially when you're a new brand, just like we're a new agency, I think it's very easy to focus just on the red and amber. But really, having like 1 or 2 moments just to take a step back and appreciate the green is also really important.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I think that's a great mindset that a lot of people who are starting out in their brand should definitely keep in mind. That way you really have that positive momentum, keep moving forward, even when you have some of those tougher moments. And what about you, Cassie?
I would suggest before thinking about your product campaign or whatever it is that you're launching, take a step to think about the messaging. Ask yourself lots of questions. Who are the founders? What is the story? Why is the brand? Why does it exist? What can you offer people that nobody else can't? Pull your messaging together and help that feed your content strategy. And then when you're actually going into content creation, I'd also say, don't be afraid to be loud and take risks, because the era of safe and, nice messaging and stuff, it's kind of over. Like, don't be afraid to show your personality, be a bit tongue in cheek and just kind of go for it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Well, I love that. Ending the podcast on a positive note, which is great to hear. Well, before I let you go, in case someone was listening to this and thought, wow, I would love to use Shade in the Studio to revamp my creative strategy, where is the best place that my listeners can find you online?
So you can find us on our website, shadythestudio.com. We're building out our social media now. But you can also just email me, shiv@shadythestudio.com, if you have any questions, if you're a brand that wants to work with me and Cassie and also the team that we have. And we've been doing great things. So feel free to email and I'd love to hear from you.
Amazing. Well, you heard it here. You can find them online. And thank you both so much, first of all, for being a guest today. It was so great to have you on.
Thanks for having us back out. Actually, for my first podcast, I feel like that wasn't stressful at all. So thank you. Absolutely love being here.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Well, for everyone listening in, that's a wrap for today's episode of Click to Buy. A big thank you to Shiv and Cassie for sharing their invaluable insights on how to create that high converting D2C content strategy. Once again, I'm your host, Becca Anderson. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, share it with all your fellow e-commerce enthusiasts so we can keep making new episodes. Until next time, keep turning those clicks into buys.